All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of the Photography Mindset Podcast. I'm your co-host, Seth Mason.
And I'm your co-host, Aaron Max.
Happy leap year, everyone. The 29th of February.
This day doesn't count.
Doesn't count? What does that mean?
Do whatever you want.
Don't take that advice.
No,
don't take
I'm
that
just kidding.
advice. But it was a good excuse for a little bonus episode just to cap the month off. Any excuse to do an extra episode. Probably a shorter one today, but full of hopefully some insight that you had an idea for an episode, and kind of eager to get into it. And we will. But before we do that, if you're enjoying these episodes, feel free to leave a rating review on Spotify. We're so close to the 200 mark. I've just been eyeing that.
Please. I'll beg. Come on.
Don't beg.
No,
But it's a cost-free, effective way to support the show, and we'll always do these for free, of course. And we also have our Alaska trip. Still two spots. If you're interested in checking that out, head to the link in our episode description, and you can see the full itinerary, what we have going on, bears, cruises, glaciers, etc.
Yeah,
Alaska vibes. Me too. What do we got for today, man? What's on your mind? A little leap year bonus episode.
Yeah,
man.
I just had this epiphany during a last shoot in
Epiphany.
I was thinking about some things.
Can
and I
you
was
spell
like,
it?
Know what? No. I have to write it to do it. EPIPHA. Wait, I have to write it. This will be tough. Epiphany. Okay. EPIPHANY.
Believe that's correct. Yes.
Yes. I'm not a good speller. That is for sure.
I was grade 4 spelling bee champion. I beat Jack Reeves, if you're watching this.
Jack. Loser. Just kidding.
The champ.
Jack's probably doing great right now.
I think my winning word was onomatopoeia, but we digress.
Wow.
You had an epiphany.
We had an epiphany. I had an epiphany, and I was like, well, actually, you were like, "Would you want to do a bonus episode this month?" And I was like, I just had an epiphany. So the epiphany was along the lines of on a shoot. I was thinking about the business side of photography, the photography side of photography, and then the client and or the business that they are running. And sometimes there's this disconnect. And I was really thinking about that potential issue or disconnect. I'll just use that word again. That can happen between business and art. And I was sitting on the fact that at our hearts, I feel like photographers, content creators, anyone that's doing video or photography or graphic design or any sort of art gets into the selling part of that. There's a piece of you that is an artist. There's a big piece of you that's really an artist and take pride in your work. I know I do. I know you do, Seth. We go to great lengths to create a photo shoot and make something happen, even for one photo. Like we can set up this whole scene. It could take an hour to get this one photo. We put a lot of pride into the art of photography. And I think when we're excited about what we've done, when we're proud of the work that we've done, it opens us up to and connects us really to that artist piece, how we're the artist and we're proud of our work, or there's some sort of emotional connection to our work. And when you hand that work over, there's like a kryptonite. There's an Achilles heel that's exposed, which is the looking for approval potentially externally, like looking for the client or the business to be like as happy as they are, as you are about the work and how much went into it. Even more than the money, even more than a quick payment of like, hey, thanks for the folder. Here's your money. And they never talk to you again. I think would hurt way more than someone being over the moon about your folder and them being late on the payments. Like, I think if they just paid you and didn't even talk to you, or just like, hey, thanks, here's your money, and like didn't use the work, didn't mention it, didn't say anything, it would leave you with this like empty feeling.
Right.
So just the epiphany, I guess, was if you're to take the art that you have, the skill that you have in photography, videography, whatever it may be, and you're trying to promote that as a business, there has to be at least a recognition of the art versus the business versus the transaction versus the external validation versus the approval, all these little pieces, so that
Right.
you're not exposed to be taken advantage of. Now, the epiphany comes from, so that's the foundation. The epiphany comes from when those things are triggered. And this happened a little bit on a shoot. I think I recognized it pretty quickly though, over, years of experience, a few years of experience, but just sort of this happening over and over again. I was kind of triggered by this sort of, oh, I don't know if they're super impressed with this. I am. I loved what I did. My friends, my peers in the field loved what I did, but I'm not feeling like they're super impressed. And then what comes from that is this little bit of an inkling to impress. Like, let me throw in extra photos. Let me throw in, I did this video. I hope you like this. Giving away all this extra stuff to gain a nod of approval, where it's like, just I'm using arbitrary numbers. We said we're going to do 10 photos for $100. Let's just say that. And you hand it over and they're like, meh, I don't know. Not what I was hoping for. The initial reaction is like, oh, well, I have these other 10, like, here's 20 photos. Do you like these now? Do you like, you want to get to the point of them saying, I love this. Thank you. Now I love it. And you're like, okay, good. Like, and I think that's a dangerous spot or dangerous vulnerability for most artists in the business, to be able to be proud of your work, put a line on it, and then say, like, you did the best that you can, and this is what we agreed to, and I'm going to hand it over, and the contract's the contract. I'm not going to go way over and above and beyond to try to impress. I don't know their personality. I don't know how excitable they are. I can't take this stuff personally. And on the other hand, I'm not accusing anyone of this, but I think businesses, if you're a savvy business partner, you're trying to get the best deal, right? If
Right.
you're trying to, your bottom line is your bottom line. And if you can get something for free or get more for free, it's going to help out your business. So if you understand that, like, these little comments and little things might encourage people to just hand over everything and hand over the farm and try to appease you, you can be super manipulative with the artist type. And I think I'm not saying anyone's doing that on purpose, but we're trying to get the best deal. The artists are trying to get the best deal. And there's this war that's happening. And sometimes it's like a wonderful connection, and sometimes it's a wonderful relationship and it builds, but sometimes it's a war of like, we want to get the lowest price and the most stuff, and we're going to take advantage if we can.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame anyone for doing that, because it's their business, and it's the less money they spend, the more they have. So it's potentially a tactic, maybe unconscious or subconscious, but I want all artists to know, because I was feeling it and able to like unravel it, that it's a potential for us to let down our guard and just be like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I want to impress you here. I'll stay an extra day. I'll do like all this extra stuff to try to get now I'm happy. Thank you very much. Here's the original money. Here's the $100 for the 10 photos we want. We walk away with 100 photos and
Right.
10 videos. Thank you very much. It was great doing business with you. So again, I'm not saying everyone's out there with bad intent, but I do see this like this weak point, this weak spot, this soft spot in photographers as business owners, because they are artists, and artists potentially really care about validation or being seen and understood, maybe more than money. Being understood is, I think, vital in relationships, and artists really care about that.
Yeah, I think what's potentially interesting to consider is this somebody you're working for the first time? If so, is this somebody you're going to continue to work for in the future? Right? Are we anticipating the potential for future revenue from, because we're talking as business owners here, as freelancers, right? We're not talking this. I mean, you did talk about the art, but money is tied into this. I think there's something to be said for doing a great job, giving the deliverables that were agreed upon, and kind of standing your ground. I understand what you're saying. We want to feel validated and that our work is appreciated and all those things. But I think if you do an assessment and you realize this is likely a one off, I think there's no benefit to giving extra things, right?
Mhm.
What's really the benefit? I mean, if you can see that maybe I didn't do my best job, maybe they're looking for something different. If I do really impress, this is going to lead to more income or revenue in the future, then that makes more sense. I think you have to detach, which is easier said than done, right? And what you were referring to was, it kind of reminded me of, and I was typing notes, is intrinsic rewards versus extrinsic, right?
Right.
Extrinsic being money, the bonus, extra vacation time, tangible things. Like if we're talking about a boss employee relationship, whereas the intrinsic rewards are, derived from a sense of purpose and the satisfaction of achieving something meaningful, right? So there's like a lot of evidence to suggest with employers that they should really focus more on the importance of intrinsic rewards. I know this doesn't necessarily apply here because we're talking about a freelance type thing, but
Mhm.
in the workplace, because it shows that you value personal growth and creativity and fulfillment, right? So again, I just think if there's not a potential for future revenue, I think you got to kind of stick to with what you agreed on and take it on the chin that your work wasn't appreciated, which sucks, but there's another bus every 15 minutes, as the saying goes. There's 100 other people out there who will appreciate what you're doing to the same extent, right? Or not be difficult or be much easier to work with. And I think just in this game, it's impossible to assume that you're not going to run into those kinds of hiccups ever, right?
Oh yeah, it's impossible. It's going to happen. I just think it's worth discussing, like, that there might be a soft spot out there for a lot of people that might get that sort of urge to, ooh, they're not impressed. Ooh, they don't like me. Like the people
Right.
pleasing artists
Well,
sort
here's the
of.
thing too. Are you bending the knee because somebody else doesn't like your work, despite knowing in your heart that you've made an awesome product? That's not right. If
Right.
you can tell yourself, "Hey, I've made a kick-ass folders of deliverables. This is my best work." And they're kind of pushing the threshold a bit, wanting more.
Hmm.
That's not right. I
Right.
think whether it's a great set of assets that you've handed over or not.
Hmm.
And I'm just I'm okay with never working for somebody again
Hmm.
if I don't see the opportunity and we're going beyond what was agreed upon.
Right.
And maybe and that does suck, because I know what you're saying is that as an artist, the artist in us, we're talking, everything I've just said is from a business mindset,
Right.
right? Imagine you worked for some company and you had no personal um, skin in the game, right? It'd
Hmm.
be easy to just walk away. This isn't working out, whatever. You'd go home, forget about it.
Hmm.
But when somebody doesn't like your work, that hurts because it's a challenge, I believe, on your self worth, right?
Right.
It creates it creates an anger, and anger is really just a representation of some kind of fear. Right? We've said that a lot on this show, and it's interesting to dig into maybe what are you afraid of? And in this instance, it would be sounding like that person doesn't think my art is good enough, which is a reflection of me, which doesn't make me feel safe.
Yeah, or maybe even more simply, like they don't like it. So wait, am I as good as I think I am? Right?
Right.
Like,
So you're not as secure
yeah,
in
yeah.
your beliefs. Right.
Which can trigger, I guess that's my point, is that it can trigger this sort of like, well, let me jump through fire to
Right.
prove my worth. I have all this extra stuff, or I'll spend all this extra time to get this thing, or I'll put together this amazing post to
Yes.
promote your stuff for free and blah blah blah. You can do
So
all these things.
what damage does that or does that not cause for the community and for yourself potentially?
Right. Well, I know, and that's what I'm getting at is
Okay.
I had this whole thing play out in my head, and I stood very strong with where I wanted to stand. I did a little extra in the beginning because I always do. This was before anything had happened. If I have the assets and it's a little bit more, I'm going to give them over. Like,
What's a little bit more, just so
uh,
people can know?
photos, I don't know,
Just
10,
arbitrary
20.
example. Like if you promise 10, you're going to give what, 12, 15?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
If I promise 40, maybe I give 50, 55. Like just
Right.
I don't know, 5% more, 10% more, whatever it is.
Where it's not a ton of extra work, but you're technically going above and beyond what you
Yeah.
agreed upon.
Gives them a little choice.
Gives the feeling of a
Probably.
deal.
Yeah. That too.
Right.
And I think going above what you said is only going to get you good reviews, typically, is only going to get someone saying, hey, yeah, they promised this, but they gave us, 10 more. Like it was great
Right.
working with them. They got a lot done.
So what's
Whatever.
too far?
Too far is when it's coming from a place. I said I do this always. That's typically a thing.
It's typical, right?
It's my protocol for my business. I'm going to do a little bit extra than what I say. I'm going to promise what I know I can deliver. And if it goes really well and I'm done and it's not extra time necessarily, like I'm done with it, I can hand it over. What goes above and beyond, or where I think it becomes a negative or a negative trait in a sense, is where you say, "Uh-oh, they don't like it. Like now I have to do more," or they left me on red. They didn't say anything. I feel like I need a response. Like I'm gonna do a crazy reel right now just to show them. Like I want to try to get some sort of reaction, like where you get triggered to get that approval or get that sort of, hey man, we got your work, we love it, thanks for the extra stuff. It's like trying to win over the approval. When that's happening, it's not good. If it's given out of the kindness of your own heart without any sort of manipulation, or just sort of like then it seems fair and fine. And I do suggest going a little bit over than what you promise. It's not going to hurt you, but going a lot over because you were triggered, because they didn't go gaga about your photos or your video, and now you're trying to prove that you're worthy. That's where it gets a little bit yucky. And to answer your question, that's where it hurts the community, because it might just be all business for them. And it's like, the people talk too, just like photographers might talk about a client. How was it like working with X, Y, and Z? Oh, it was great. They were really respectful and nice. We all talk. And I think clients in the same field will talk, and they'll say like, hey, that photographer, like, act a little tough. He completely just opens up and will give you the whole bank.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. They just might say like, hey, don't go nuts about his photos. Like, just say you were hoping for a little bit more and he will give you double. Like, and I think that hurts the community, because then it's like, oh, this guy will do double for that price where this person won't. And where it all should be somewhat regulated as much as it can be. Right. So yes, the emotional investment into the whole thing can hurt the whole community.
Right, because then we get into the conversation that we routinely have about our role as a community to avoid a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? A race to the bottom sucks.
Yeah.
And it hurts everyone. Or it can.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Like this, when we talk about it, and I'm not saying I disagree, and I've done it, and I know Seth, you've done it in the beginning when you're working and building a portfolio, and you're willing to do stuff for free and try things out.
I
And
get it.
I
Yes.
I totally get it, but I also think that comes from the artist's personality, the artist's mentality. There's not a lot of other businesses that, or trades, let's say, that just no one's coming to my door and saying, "Hey, do you want a free new bathroom? I'm pretty good at making new bathrooms. Like, I just want to try it, and maybe you can tell some of your friends." Or like a house builder, let me build a house on your property. Do you mind if we do that? Because you're going to get a lot of exposure with cars driving by, and they might see that I built this house for free. Like
Right.
that stuff doesn't happen. I know there's training programs and there's internships and all that stuff, but it really doesn't happen the same way as how eager photographers are to throw themselves into the line of duty for free.
Well, then the real reality becomes, because that logic is broken to a certain extent, because then people see, oh, that house was built for free. I want mine built for free too. They got their bathroom built for free. I want mine built for free too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think a good direction to go, if you genuinely are someone who wants to improve your portfolio for free, like by doing free work, is to preface it with, hey, I'm not as experienced maybe as some other photographers you worked with. I'd like to build my portfolio to gain experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know that goes against what you just said, but at least if you do go that route, you're insinuating that experienced photographers should be paid. So a year or two from now, when you are that experienced photographer, not even a year or two from now, once you've done a couple projects either on your own time or by working with other businesses pro bono, you're experienced now.
Yeah.
I think it's, if you're going to go the free route, you got to mention your lack of experience and that you're trying to gain some, because then at the very least, you're letting that other person know who may not know otherwise that experienced photographers, whatever you define experience as, whether that's 3 months or 30 years, deserve to be paid. And everybody does deserve to be paid, but you can't stop people from doing what they're doing. So at the very least, let's preface our conversations or our correspondence with that verbiage.
Yeah, I totally agree. You can go into things very calculated, no matter what you're doing. You don't have to take as much also from a client. You don't have to you can borrow the product for a little bit and return it. You can build your portfolio that way. It's kind of like, I think there is be careful. I've always advocated, if you want to build your portfolio, get a group of friends and Airbnb portfolio or cabin portfolio, get a group of friends, split a place for a night or two and go nuts. And then potentially sell your photos if they really like them. But this whole barter trade thing, which again, I've done before, so I'm not saying anyone that does it is a fool, but I just think there are ways to go about it. And I guess the whole point of this episode is to key into that artist's feeling of approval. Why are we all on Instagram? Like we are doing that because we like our art, and then we like when other people like our art.
Well, and even more so, when someone likes our art, it's a status thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you get 1,000 likes compared to somebody else who doesn't, you are ascending in status. And with our Paleolithic brain, status improved our chances of survival. Like, we're still very wired. We're not equipped for the modern world with our brain.
No,
We're just
true.
not. You're walking around with a 200,000-year-old brain. And sometimes you can't, there's no way to fight that. You just have to have better protocols, I feel like, to manage that and understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we talked about the why question so many times, why that's such a good question to ask yourself when you do anything. Why am I doing this? Why do I care? Why am I sad about this? And you can just kind of backpedal
Yeah.
and find out a lot about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And feel the feels, and don't move quickly. You can take some time before you answer a
Yeah.
DM or a response or whatever. What happened just recently was just, the deal was for photos, right? Just in my experience, what made me think of this, the deal was completely for photos, for listing. And then I had some video. The job is done. Then I had some video, and the client wanted that video as well. And it was like, the video is done. I did it for myself. It's an easy press send, right?
Mhm.
Like at this point, it takes 2 seconds to send it on over. But there is a business protocol. The artist of me would be like, sure, go ahead. I hope people see it and like it, and maybe it gets more business, like whatever.
The
The
status
business,
thing.
yeah, the business side of me goes like, hey, I don't mean to be a stickler, but that's not what we agreed on.
Mhm.
And that's not fun convo for, I think, a people pleasing artist. And again, I'm stereotyping or generalizing us as a whole, but I think most of us would fall under that sort of realm of wanting to be approved, wanting to please, wanting to show our work, wanting our work to be seen and liked and wanted. I think that's probably very human and a probably fair assessment of most of us out here.
Yeah.
Especially getting into it, especially newer photographers or newer content creators, we want to be liked and approved and status, like you're saying. So it does go against maybe the heart, and it's a heart and mind thing, but the mind was very clear of like, okay, like stick to the business protocol, be very kind and fair about it, and let's see what happens, but stick to it.
Yeah, the other interesting thing too is when you hand over something, you're anticipating a reward from handing over those things, the reward being money,
Mhm.
right? The hard part is when you don't hand over something, when you withhold sending more because you feel whatever way you feel, the way we've just talked about. There's no reward for withholding things. So it can be difficult to do so.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like there's no reward for doing nothing, for not giving for
Yeah.
not giving the extra assets you have. In your mind,
Even
right, in
e-
your mind you think that giving the extra stuff is going to lead to some kind of reward.
even if that reward is, oh, thank you. Oh, I can't wait to share this. Oh,
Right.
it gets you another gig. Even worse than getting no reward is the fear also of like, they they might turn around and be like, don't work with this guy.
Right.
He's a real jerk. They could say whatever they want, and our minds go wild with the anxiety and the fear of the future of like, oh, it's people pleasing. It's
Yeah.
being a doormat. And what I've found, and it took, I think, growing up and older age to be able to really set boundaries with people and say, no, with all due respect, like this is the way I do things. And I can't think of one time where that's resulted in a fight or a bad situation. Usually, I think it's a very strong stance that re- the response typically is like, "Oh, I totally understand. I get that. I get how business works."
So
Like
there's your reward. Your reward is being validated in that
validated for your
sense.
boundaries.
There
Yes.
always has to be a reward, otherwise it makes no sense to your brain to do or not do something, and that's what I was getting at. If there's no reward for not giving over extra assets, you're just going to do it because
Mhm.
you see the path of least resistance to the more likely reward of getting that approval, of maybe getting bonus money, of getting a referral.
Right.
And it's like when we're, trying to develop a new habit, let's say, because I'm big on this habits book right now, there's more reward for doing, let's say, 10 push ups because you can track it, it's a measurable number, than there is for not eating a plate of cookies. Nothing happens when you don't eat a plate of cookies. There's no visible reward. The reward is you don't put on weight as the months go by in this example, but there's no reward. So I feel like maybe developing a system where when I stand up for myself, when I put my foot down, when it's warranted, there needs to be some sort of protocol or mechanism that you reward yourself with, whether it's acknowledging a level of self-respect, whether it's
A plate of cookies.
going and having a cookie. Yeah. Like just to come full circle with the two different analogies, like there has to be some kind of reward. Otherwise the pattern won't get repeated, or you'll go to the down the path of least resistance that gives you a reward. In this case, it was the giving extra assets when you maybe don't need to, or it's not going to ultimately do anything.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that was my epiphany, and I hope this helped someone out there.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Have you ever had where I've had this, and I have a couple stories, or one or two stories. One story I want to share on this. Have you ever had where you've given your, say, an Airbnb, their folder of photos that you agreed upon, and maybe a little bit more as you like to do, right?
Yep.
But then you have these wicked videos you've created from your own personal time there, and you post them, and they're like, "Oh,
yeah." Yeah.
Why weren't these in our folder?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an interesting conversation.
It is. And it kind of just happened. I nicely said, this is real life. I nicely said, "Hey, this was part of my package X, Y, or Z. Like, this was my mid package, included all that. You kindly, like, you looked through all my packages, you chose a certain thing, and that's what we did."
But it's already filmed anyways, Aaron.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is. But this is a business as well. I'm sure you understand. They are assets. I own them. I'd be willing to, since they are already filmed, come up with a very fair price for what it is. If you were seriously interested in, let me know.
Well, you wouldn't have filmed that stuff if I didn't let you on my property anyways.
Well, I might have, and I could have if I was on your property. So yeah, I don't know. This is pretty typical. This is protocol. You had my package. You were able to see what you wanted to pick. You picked photos. You didn't want any videos. I did take some videos. Yes, for sure. I do have them. If you're interested in me putting something together for you, I definitely will. I hope you understand.
I'm out of role play dialogue.
Yeah. I'll just keep going back with that. I hope you understand.
You know what? Empathy also as well. Yeah. I can, starting any rebuttal, would it be a rebuttal or refuting an argument with empathy? Hey, look, I understand that I would never have gotten these shots if we hadn't agreed, if you didn't come to my property, but hey, yeah, I know I have these really cool videos that I filmed during my time there. You pick these packages. We can talk about it. Like, empathy is always a good way to go, because the whole theme of this episode is being understood and being heard and being appreciated. You need to see other people's perspective, even if it's whack in your own mind. Yep. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, you do. You do your best. And I think a great lesson in life is learning what a trigger feels like. I know a trigger is an overused word and one of those, psychoanalytical pop phrases going on, but it's a feeling. It's an emotional rush. So if you feel that emotional rush, trying not to act in it, like feel it and sit it out and think and take a walk. Think before you react, before you reply.
My favorite way to do this is copy the email, compose a new email, right? Paste it in, write my reply how I would want to say it, even if it's a big F you, right? And just leave it there. I don't have their email address in the send bar. I don't have a subject line. It's just, I write down what I would want to say if my words didn't have consequences, or if I wasn't a professional.
Right.
And then I leave it for 24 hours and I come back and I go, I was mad.
Yeah.
Let's revise this.
Yeah.
And you revise it and then you send it. That's 24 hours. So whenever you're in a disagreement or you're emotionally invested, the emotion has to happen first. Otherwise, there's no incentive to act. Right? Like anger and pain and happiness and all these different emotions, they trigger movement of some kind, action of some kind. It's important. But logic also serves a very good place, rightfully so, and reason. And that comes after emotion for good evolutionary reason. When a lion's chasing you, you don't go, right? We still have that 200,000-year-old brain. But in today's world, you got to sit on things. You got to not fly off the handles. You need to be emotionally intelligent, right?
Right. Yeah.
And, I actually had, what was this, 1-2 years ago? I did a shoot for a company, and I guess there was some miscommunication on, I can't really remember, it was hazy, what the total price would end up being. I think what it was I gave my day rate, and they assumed that the shoot would take 1 day, and it took 2. And so it was double what they were expecting. You following me so far?
Yes.
I could have that wrong.
But it makes sense.
So before I finish the story, at some point in my emails, I said, you know what? My fault. I'm a big fan of that, always saying my fault within reason. Don't be a doormat, but my fault. And it was. I should have been concrete in my communication of the day rate doesn't mean 1 day.
Right.
Right. So what ended up happening is I think I delivered a folder of like 60 photos that were going to be used to make revenue for this company. And I actually ended up saying, you can't have all the photos if you're paying me for a day. So actually removed, I think, about half of them from the drive.
Your choice or their choice?
Our agreed upon decision. And it was, I think it was their idea. Okay, well, we would like to pick then, of the 60 you have, a day's worth of photos. And I was like, great, make your selections. And then I went in and removed all the other ones that could not be used for commercial purposes. So just an interesting story about when miscommunication can go wrong, but also how you can rectify situations while also standing your ground. Yeah. I could have just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Keep them all." I think it was my fault, but it could have been more of a two-way street. I'm sorry, I'm kind of vague on it.
Yeah.
So I took ownership for what I could have changed. But I was like, I'm not giving, even though all this work is done, I'm not giving away all that stuff for marketing purposes. So you get to pick. Which ones do you feel are best and you would like?
Yeah. And then you also have this last line of like, hey, next time you need more, I have these extra 30 and you won't have to hire a photographer. It would probably save you a little bit of money. Like, hit me up.
Right. So I just thought I'd share that story.
Yeah. So,
well, cool episode. Happy leap year.
Thank you. Happy leap year to you. Remember, you can do anything today.
And it doesn't count?
It doesn't count.
Do not take that to the bank.
No. I just think
not true.
I think if you go to court and they're like, well, where were you on the day of February 29th? You could be like, that's not a date.
That's not a date.
That didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
So
if there's anybody out there who was born on a leap year, write us. I don't know if I know anybody born on who?
43 divided. They're like 12 years old right now.
Yeah, that's crazy. They're minors.
A lot of them. Well, I guess it depends how old they are. If they're my age, they'd be like 12 years old.
That's not right. A leap year happens every 4 year. Yeah, that would be then. You're right.
Well, I mean, it depends. 11.
I want to know somebody who was born on a leap year. So
Yeah. When do you celebrate? March 1st?
yeah, when do
typically?
you celebrate? I have so many questions.
I think March 1st.
What does your passport say?
Ooh.
So, I mean,
Interesting.
this is a quick Google, but I'd rather
Let's just ponder it for a little
let's
bit.
just ponder.
Let's use the old brain to ponder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts today. And
Yeah. Well, hopefully that helps and people can maybe key in and just be like, oh, that is kind of true. And I do that, or I'm good
Yeah.
at not doing that. And I need to watch that. I need to pay attention to that.
Yes. And if you're listening on Spotify, head to the Q&A section. There's a poll and a question related to this episode. Weigh in. Make this more of a two-way conversation. We can publish those answers and it just adds to the community. You can share your thoughts, some ideas, things that work, things that don't work. And the polls are always fun because you get a good sense of what everyone's kind of thinking on the topics of the episode. So that's all I got for today. Till next time, my
Me too.
friend.
Take care.
See ya.